On today's World Insight, a worldwide scramble to contain the Omicron coronavirus variant to ward off another COVID wave. How easily does it spread, and how effective are current vaccines against it? And effective COVID treatment a top priority for Chinese researchers. The latest on China's treatment pills against COVID.
The antibody drug that we have developed are able to recognize and then kill the virus from all different parts of the world.
Here is our host, Tian Wei.
Hello and welcome to World Insight. I'm Tian Wei. A World Health Organization panel has labeled the new Omicron coronavirus as a highly transmissible variant of concern, the same category as the fastest spreading Delta variant. First detected in South Africa, the variant is very new and the global researchers are looking into how harmful it is. As Omicron popped up in Europe, North America, Latin America, and some countries in Asia, flights to and from Southern Africa have been suspended. Global vaccine makers have been announcing efforts to upgrade vaccines against Omicron, with China's CanSino announcing it has begun data collection and analysis of the variant. As Omicron rapidly spreads, it is a dire reminder of the fact none of us are safe until all of us are safe. What more can be done to curb Omicron spread? Let's loop in our panelists. For more on COVID-19 latest, joining us in Seoul, Dr. Alice Kim Kyung-tan, internist at the Ms. Medim Women's Hospital from South Korea. In Nanjing, Wu Zhiwei, director from the Center for Public Health Research with Medical School of Nanjing University. Welcome to both of you. Alice, tell me more about what do we know now with Omicron, the latest variant?
Well, it was first reported to the WHO by South Africa on November 24th, but the first confirmed case was detected in a sample that was drawn November 9th. So it's already been about 3 weeks since at least the first confirmed case was detected. We know epidemiologically that it has overcome the dominance of the Delta variant. It looks like in some provinces in South Africa. So within a 10-day period, more than 70% of sequences, genetic sequences from the Gauteng province were of the Omicron variant. Previously, the Delta variant, of course, was the dominant strain. However, it looks like in terms of virulence, from the epidemiological data and also the anecdotal information that we're getting out of South Africa, that perhaps it is not as lethal or more lethal, at least, than the Delta variant, even though cases in South Africa have really exploded. The number of daily deaths has not gone up proportionately. So perhaps in terms of virulence, we don't have as much to fear. The concern, though, is because there is a large number of changes in the genetic code, so about 50 changes compared to the original ancestral strain, there is a big concern of decreased vaccine effectiveness and also perhaps decreased effectiveness of treatments such as monoclonal antibodies.
Right. Talking about those changes, Professor Wu, we did understand earlier the variants from one from the other actually did not make much change. It is 2 out of 10,000 or 20,000 in a way. So now it seems that with this new variant, the change could be much bigger than it used to be. What could that mean? Epidemiologically speaking, what would they mean?
Well, actually, this is very important because If you look at the changes in the spike protein, which actually is a protein virus uses to bind to its cellular receptor to get into the cells, and also this spike protein is the target of the current vaccine and also the antibody therapeutic targets as well. So in that particular region, so far there are 32 changes have been identified, which is the double of Delta variant. So this is just a tremendous number of changes in a relatively short period. So that's why it was kind of surprising to the scientific community. If you look at it carefully, where the changes happen, and some of the changes happened exactly in the so-called RBD. RBD is the key region for the current vaccines. So that's why the people are really concerned that the current vaccine, their efficacy will be compromised. So if this is the case, then this will raise the alarm, and you have to deal with the completely new virus again.
China so far has been practiced so-called zero tolerance against the COVID-19, which means if there were cases locally appearing, likely some small communities will be concealed from the rest of the city so that things would be limited to the utmost. So Professor Wu, now we see more variants are coming out. There seems to be more traveling among other countries before this. So how does China or experts like you assess all of the latest development?
By closing the border, by seal and the community, actually, you can only delay the transmission of the virus, but you won't be able to completely block the virus from entering. So this is something that we have to bear in mind, that we are in the phase of the pandemic. The virus is not going to be simply blocked and then just die away. I think the critical thing is that we have to increase the vaccination rates. And it's not only talking about a single country, but we have to talk in a global sense and the global communities, cooperation and unity. So that's why it's very important. If you look at the South Africa, the full vaccination rate is about 25%. So it's very low. I think that this is something actually we need to pay particular attention. In the developed country, industrialized country, when you have a high vaccination rates, the virus slows down. It doesn't necessarily mean that the pandemic is gone. It's going to come back once a new variant arrives. That's what we're facing right now with the Omicron. I think it's very critical that not only by increasing the vaccination rates, but we also need to look at all possible antiviral drug treatment as well to build up the two-shield protection system. So once we reach that, then we could gradually open the society step by step. So this is some kind of assurance policy in terms of dealing with a vicious pandemic.
We did hear Dr. Tan, the president of South Africa, calling on the world to share more of the vaccines. Certainly in the developing world, and particularly the least developed economies, things are very slow because there has not been a very good global distribution and contribution system. Now, Dr. Tan, we know earlier we talked about CEPI, Gavi, all of these international platforms trying to do the job, but it seems that it takes much more than that. So, Dr. Tan, so far, what have we learned?
We've learned, just as was stated, that either we all rise together out of the pandemic or we all fall together as a global community. And so equitable vaccine distribution must have been our priority. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like we will achieve our goal of 40% global full vaccination by the end of this year. We were hoping to get 70% global vaccination by mid-2022, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to achieve those goals. And so I think countries...
If those goals, Dr. Tan, are not being achieved, what could that mean? Because those goals were set for a reason.
It means the pandemic will be prolonged. It means more people will die than need to die. It means that we will be pouring more and more money to try to manage this disease. And so we're losing on all fronts. It really does need to become a priority, not just health-wise, but I think politically as well, for the entire global community to make sure that there is better equitable distribution of vaccines. But then, of course, the next step is when those antiviral oral pills become available, that we have good distribution of these pills as well.
But also on the pills, there are questions. I mean, it's wonderful to hear the news of the new possibility treatment pills, but with the new variant, once again, there's the challenge whether these pills are relevant anymore or how relevant they could be. So do the vaccines. So how do you see the latest variant and the function of both the treatment pills and the vaccines, Dr. Tan?
You know, we hope that the oral pills, the way that they work in terms of the mechanism, they decrease replication of the virus, that this new virus, in terms of how it replicates itself in the human body, that they will be preserved. These mechanisms will be preserved. Therefore, the oral pills will still work against the Omicron variant. But of course, this needs to be tested in a laboratory setting for us to confirm. But that is the hope among experts, that Omicron has not made the new pills obsolete even before they're launched. In terms of vaccine efficacy or effectiveness in the real world, as I said, it doesn't look like right now in South Africa, the vaccines that they're using are the Pfizer vaccine and the Janssen vaccines. It doesn't look like we're seeing an overwhelmingly high number of deaths, even though Omicron has really taken over some of the provinces, like the Gauteng province. So perhaps in terms of protecting against hospitalization and death, at least the Pfizer and the Janssen vaccines are doing what they're supposed to do, even in the face of the Omicron variant.
China has both the vaccines and also now the treatment pills. It's already in the process of coming to the market, hopefully very soon, later this year. Once again, though, Professor Wu, the same question. How relevant are these vaccines that China produced and also the treatment pills likely to be with us soon?
Well, with current vaccine, I think it still is highly relevant because for the Omicron virus to take a hold and then take over the Delta virus, it will take some time. And currently, we don't know. We don't have enough evidence that this virus will persist as a Delta virus. If you look at the in 2 years pandemic, there are many other variants as well. And once they emerge, some of them actually only appeared and take a hold in a small area for a short time and then just vanished. So that's what we saw. If you look at the Beta and the Delta viruses, actually they do spread all over the world. So there are many different factors impacting on the virus spreading. So
like what?
I think right
like
now,
what?
Well, actually, human-human contact virus, internal properties, and also immunological sensitivities. There are many various different factors restricting or even sometimes could promoting the virus from transmitting from human to human. But in the current situation, I think people still should take the vaccines and increase the vaccination rates nationwide. I think that's very critical.
Now we see more cases in China. Mainly, there are cities and towns on the border. For example, the town of Manchuria in Inner Mongolia. For example, the town of Mohe, also in Heilongjiang province. The bordering towns, it seems to be now where the major concerns are. And there are new policies suggesting about how people in those towns will be asked if they travel elsewhere in the country. So, Professor Wu, tell us more about your thoughts on this.
Well, I think this is clear to me that the cross-border traveling is one of the risk factors in bringing the virus, and we have seen in the past many instances, like in Nanjing and in Xiamen and in other cities as well. The other thing actually indicates to me is that actually checking in the border area for the passengers actually is relatively easy to find out who actually might be carrying the virus. I think this is something actually we should increase the cross-border traveling surveillance and testing of the virus. This is, I think, should be our focus in terms of blocking the virus from exporting into the country. And then in domestic front, then we should establish a system to trace the contact and the subcontact dissemination. So this is something I think we have built up or accumulated sufficient experience in doing it. There is no point that in one city you find one case and then the entire city has to go through the so-called full population nucleic acid testing, and the communities got locked up. If you look at the outcome of what we have been doing, I mean, in some cities, I think it's a complete overreaction because the outcome of this, the entire city either lockdown or the full testing, generated very little information and new cases.
You're watching World Insight. Coming up, effective COVID treatment, a top priority for Chinese researchers. The latest development of China's treatment pills against COVID-19. Next. Welcome back. This is World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Chinese drug researchers are working around the clock now to speed up work on effective COVID treatment. Data from China and overseas show treatment could reduce severe symptoms and mortality by 78%. So far, China has focused research on 3 ways of treating COVID cases, mainly on blocking the entry of the virus into cells, inhibiting virus replication, and regulating the human immune system. For a better understanding of this research, I talked to Zhang Lianqi, a professor from Tsinghua University School of Medicine. He is the leader of the research team on the COVID treatment, at least one of those treatment teams. Let's take a listen to his story on the special drug research. I know you and your colleagues are working on the COVID pills. Tell me more about the latest development of the Chinese COVID pill. Where are you now? Which stage?
Yes, at the very beginning of the outbreak, my laboratory at Tsinghua University immediately start to isolate antibodies from the COVID-19 convalescent patients. We know the antibody is a very important part of our immune system that could protect us from infection and disease progression. So the ultimate goal is to isolate those antibodies and select the best among the best, meaning to have the highest potency and the breadth to inhibit viral infections. So those, the best among the best, can be developed into antibody drugs. Right now, the antibody we isolated from the convalescent patients has already gone through the preclinical and clinical studies and demonstrated the 78% efficacy in reducing deaths and hospitalizations led by the National Institute of Health. So we are very excited to see those results, and hopefully in the near future, will be approved for the emergency use here in China and around the world.
So you have already submitted the paper to the relevant authorities in China?
Yes, yes. That's have already been done in the early October. And
All right.
then we are looking forward to hearing from them soon.
As we know, there are three ways, according to some research, for treating COVID cases through pills, for example, mainly focusing on blocking the entry of the virus into the cells, inhibiting
Yes.
virus replications, and regulating the human immune system. Now, which category are yours project falling into? Which one do you consider as a researcher to be more efficient?
In our mind, each kind of pills have its own advantages, such as the small molecule is easy to take, but the requirement for early diagnosis and the long-term safety benefits still need to be studied. Our drugs are antibody drugs that derive from human and then modified and then back into human. So it's come in a natural form. It has two major functions. One is to inhibit virus from entry, so it's antiviral activity. On the other hand, the antibody is a part of our immune system, so it could also boost our immune system. And then through the advance of biologic technologies, we are able to treat some changes to the antibody, and that antibody could have a durable effect, long-lasting in our blood. So you could see, and then from the current point of view, antibody are superior at current stage.
So you're suggesting, it seems to be, if I'm reading between words, what you are doing now is much safer version of the COVID pill than, let's just say, some of the other options. Is that what you're trying to suggest?
Yes, I would agree with that, because this antibody has an antiviral function, has an immune boosting function, and has a durability superiority. So in the context of this prevention and the treatment, antibody drugs are certainly the top choice in our mind.
People are asking about the question whether the treatment pills that we are researching about today around the world are going to be relevant if the variants continue to multiply, the numbers of variants in the future. What do you make of that, and particularly about the ones that you are researching about?
That's a very good question. It's right to the scientific focus that right now. While the virus continue to vary and then to escape from our drugs therapy and from antibody drugs and from vaccines. So we are monitoring this chasing game very carefully. Luckily and thankfully, the antibody drug that we have developed are able to recognize and then kill the virus from all different parts of the world. Meaning that our antibodies still maintain antiviral activity against alpha, beta, gamma, delta variants. So that's why the efficacy showed in the phase 3 trial are very encouraging.
Of course, the other legitimate question I should ask is how many people, how big is their base in terms of trials in the earlier times?
The trial can vary in numbers, and it really depends on the incidence of diseases. So if the drugs is able to show a greater promise in a very high incident area, the number of participants are not particularly big. So we are talking about in the thousands of trial participants.
Are you suggesting, Professor Zhang, this is all done in China? Because we know China has been having this zero tolerance policy against COVID-19 cases, and therefore not many cases inside this country. Are you doing this globally? And how are you getting the numbers from others if you are doing it globally?
Absolutely. This is not only conducted in China, but with collaborators from many other countries to be able to show efficacy, safety in the real world situations. It's not practical to do this in China right now, given the caseload is so small. So our colleagues in the United States, in the South Africa, in Mexico have contributed substantially to this great work.
A very interesting development and certainly important development. Another thing we want to ask about the treatment pills is when they could be available, because right now we do see that relevant authorities are giving green lights to vaccines and to treatment pills in a much faster speed than to other pharmaceutical productions. Usually the time frame is about 6 to 7 years, but we have seen with vaccine, for example, it could be very short. Now, what about treatment pills?
Yes, this is a very critical question to all of us involved, because safety concern is the most important factor everybody consider. So despite of accelerated process, the safety requirement has never decreased in the slightest way. So the question arises maybe, how could you do things so fast without compromising your safety standard? The practical path that we have, the practical path that we have taken is to conduct the procedure, regulatory procedure, development procedure in a parallel way instead of a sequential way. So we could take more risks, but to gain a lot of time in accelerating the process.
We see that China, for example, with the vaccines by Sinopharm and also Sinovac, they've been sharing the rights of these drugs with other countries, which meaning that other countries can also produce these drugs, and therefore it could be better serve their people and their region. Now, China has been doing that. Now, with the treatment pills, we understand there are certain Western pharmaceutical companies who are also in the process of doing it. Now, what about the Chinese treatment pills, for example, the ones that you're researching about? How do you see the future of intellectual property rights of it, and how to make sure that it can be better shared by the rest of the world?
Yes, and this is a really question that we are looking for, is to have an international coordinated mechanism, such as led by World Health Organization, will have appropriate arrangement for various patent as well as appropriate market to apply for those patent and product. So ultimately, we will share what we have, and then for the benefit of the people around the world, not just China, not just developed countries, but also many other developing countries as well. But mechanistically, we are looking forward to a major coordinator such as WHO to conduct this activity.
I learned a lot. Thank you so much, Professor Zhang Linqi. All the best luck to the treatment pills that you and your colleagues are working on. And that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, search World Insight or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei. On behalf of the team, thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.